In my group today, I found myself saying how special and sacred this retreat feels, and not to take it for granted in the sense of who knows if there'll be another one, because we don't know how life will unfold in this particular way and configuration. And I've just been feeling that, especially today, the specialness of being with you, even online, and of connecting with you, and of practicing with you, and of going through the different struggles of being alive with you, and of the incredible gift of having the container. And I know we call it the Dharma container, as though somehow there is this thing that's outside of us and separate from us. But the Dharma is just a word for what's living inside of us. And what we bring energetically, even though it's just a square on the screen, it's still felt, at least for me and maybe for you too, this aliveness and Dharma-ishness, that expression as we're living it in how we are together in this room. That feels so sacred and special. And the Buddha said to some of the practitioners who he was walking with, he stooped down and he got a little bit of sand from the Ganges River. And some of you have heard me tell this story, but it comes to my heart right now. And he put this pinch of sand on his nail and he said, is this a lot of sand? And they said, no, it's not a lot of sand. And he said, this is how many people sentient beings come to the Dharma, compared to all the sand grains that live along the Ganges River. That when we think of all sentient life and all the many millions, billions of people on this planet, how few of us have been called, are open to, have the blessing, the inner blessing of the courage and the willingness to try on, right? A transformative practice. Thank you. I wanted to give a Dharma talk about loving kindness, or that's friendship, the capacity to be friendly, and the combination of being friendly, of caring, of open-heartedness, of connectedness, connection to life. Not like these are abstract things, but they're the energies, the living energies that express themselves in a live way as we live our lives. And some of you know, and I mentioned already, that I've been on sabbatical for a year. And in my last group, well, actually it's in the last couple of groups, someone asked, well, what happened on your sabbatical. And I could say that I did a lot of lifting, placing, and shifting in walking meditation and opening to body sensations and movement, and so that in some ways it was practice or making the effort to know what my experience is through those different traditional forms. And in retrospect, at the end of the year, it's been about a month since I come out of retreat, although there were other times that I came out. I could say that the access to a deep resource of knowing that love is an inviolate spring inside of myself has strengthened, that I have no doubt about there being love that is alive inside of me, even when I can't feel it, even when I'm in the middle of a rant about something that happened. That when I remember, I have no doubt that by turning towards that love or orienting towards it, that I am building the conditions to reconnect to it, that there's no doubt, and that because there's no doubt, it has become a deep refuge for me. Like, it is my refuge, this knowing of this capacity. And of course, that's true for presence too. And they both go hand in hand, because if we're not present, we can't love. And if it is present, that we are alive to what's happening, that's much better than present. Then there is the care for that aliveness, the caring for the life that's living, whether it's our life or another life. And some of you who have been on these retreats before know that I give a talk about love every retreat. So this has been my path for years, and it's deepened. And, you know, when we took the refuges at the beginning of this retreat, I'm sort of ad-libbing, as you can tell already. When we took the refuges at the beginning of this retreat, we were naming, even if, as we were naming culturally, as a revolutionary movement, that we have the capacity to transform our relationship to our life. That's what taking the refuges mean. And that knowing that there is this capacity inside of us means, or particularly knowing that there are these beautiful qualities living inside of us as, not just even as potentials, but as living plants, energies already, that call us back to them to support, strengthen, and awaken. And if we didn't in some way know that was true, then there would be no path, there would be no Dharma. Because what? Then we'd have to buy it from someone? We'd have to get it from someone else? How would transformation work then? But no, the dignity that we sometimes feel as human beings, that grace of, I'm alive, that rests on this understanding of this unlimited capacity. And there are great teachers that we know about, and I don't mean teachers necessarily in the Dharma, teachers whoever they have been for us, who are teachers because they communicate in some way some of the realization of these capacities. And even for some of us, if it isn't so realized, but we have deep faith in it, that's good enough. So I quoted Pema Chodron in the last group because she said in an interview recently, you know, it's funny, I'm a terrible meditator, and yet I teach thousands and thousands of people how to meditate. And I love that, because she really was saying the same thing, is that I have deep faith in this practice, even though I'm not that good at it. And I could say the same of love, you know, that I have unwavering faith in love, even though I'm not always so good at it. And that unwavering faith becomes a profound refuge, especially when things are difficult. And so we were talking about that in the group too, because I mentioned that I haven't been feeling well, which is no great new news. That's one of the things in my life, is that I often feel sick. And yesterday night I felt so bad I couldn't sleep. And so, and I couldn't quite like do metta, and my mind felt too sick and depleted to do anything. And so I got up and I grabbed my drum, and I was so like out of it, I dropped it on my foot, and it was dark, and it was like that, you know. And I took my drum and I opened the blinds of one of my windows, but far away from here, because there's someone sleeping behind the Dharma hall. And I started to drum at 3 a.m. Like just that feeling and that rhythm. And I'm only saying this because it's easy to romanticize talking about love and faith in love, like, oh, Arinna must be feeling love all this time, or Pema Chodron is, or whoever. No, it's that willingness of trusting my knowing that somewhere there's a spring, and if I make the effort, I am building a bridge to it. Okay, so now let me go back a little bit to the more traditional descriptions, and then I want to riff again. But so metta is also described as mitra in Pali, and is described as the sun generating warm feelings, or also like a gentle rain that falls on the earth without selection, or a friend who is a protector and refuge. It's a protector and refuge. And it is a mind that is permeated with caring and consideration. And it doesn't have a limit to it. Essentially, it doesn't have a limit. And it is not a noun, and that just feels so important to me. It just struck me so much. It's not a noun, it's a verb, because often we think of our practice as a noun, as a thing, and we think of metta or presence as a thing, but they're a living process. And so as a living process then, and as connected as a living process, I wanted to share what this Okanagan woman said in this book, telling it, and I must have lent the book out because I don't have her name, and I spent probably like 45 minutes looking for the book and couldn't find it. So, but here's what she said. Spirituality is very, very clearly tied in with my purpose of being as an Okanagan woman born into this world at this time. Native people think about the source of thought. We consider the vast pool of creation and its origin. We think about the things that formed us as thinking, human, walking people. When we consider the spiritual place from which our thinking arises, the words become sacred things because they come from that place. My responsibility is to strive for correctness in my presentation, correctness of purpose, and accuracy in the use of my words, in my attempt to transcend the simple actuality of things I've seen, to the image of those same things in the context of my entire history, and the sacred body of knowledge that we as people have acquired. Words have been used to destroy, to cause pain, to cause the kinds of things that we see happening all over the world between people, between individuals, between races, between sexes, even between fat and skinny people. Many words do that. My responsibility is to approach these phenomena, all of this misuse of words, from my purpose as part of a healing process for my children and my people who've been so damaged. We are all responsible in this way. We are all thinking people. We all have the ability, and we all have that responsibility. We may not want that responsibility, or we may feel unworthy of that responsibility. But every time we speak, we have that responsibility. Everything we say affects someone. Someone is hearing it. Someone is understanding it. Someone is going to take it, and it becomes memory. We are all powerful, each of one of us, individually. We are able to make things change, make things happen differently. We are all able to heal. And that's what it means to me for caring, this friendship, not to be a noun or a thing somehow to get, but a process. And as a process, then it becomes an expression of our deepest vision, of how we name our place and home in the earth, right? And with the waters and with the air and in our communities and with our bodies, that it's not separate from that, and it's not separate from the calling of healing our structures. So the other day I listened to Trevor Noah, and he said he was talking about Minnesota actually not voting to change the police in some way. I think it was something like that. They had offered to change the nature of the police force and it didn't go through. And correct me, Nora, if that's wrong. And I, there was this moment of like, Trevor, how could you say that? The police force is such an institution of protecting people in power and protecting inequality, how could you say we need the police force? And this sort of like moment of anger rears its head. And then in this moment just dropped, because I am rooted in my understanding of love and the invitation that love calls us to in transforming structures that aren't loving. And I have absolutely no doubt that the police force and the structure of the justice system need the transformation of moving from supporting inequity to supporting community. And that faith is the faith that our great leaders contribute, not exhibit, not illustrate, but model for us. And that, for me, when we talk about love, it isn't just an individual expression of sitting on the cushion and offering phrases to myself, full stop. That's great, but just full stop. It's contextualizing it in this wider vision of, however we name that wider vision, we might and do probably name it differently, of placing it as an expression of life in the whole, so that the spring of love for myself, the spring of love, is a calling to the Bodhisattva vow. And I have heard of that vow, and I never have wanted to take it, even though I've given Dharma talks about it, because it just seems so heavy. And in one part of my retreat, I was up in the mountains in southern Colorado, and it was just like being outside most of the day, every day, and feeling that life of the trees, and like here too, but because it's so hot, I spend more time indoors. And something clicked then about that we are not separate from all of life, that it makes no sense to think of myself as healed or liberated without being part of a deep commitment to create the conditions for healing for all beings everywhere. And that's what the Bodhisattva vow is. And so this practice of friendliness isn't separate from how we feel the family of life, and how we feel the police force, and how we feel about challenges on our board, or our workplace, or wherever it is, because the work of finding caring and friendship, finding respect, is about our relatedness and our origin story as a people. Mine from South Africa and apartheid, that's my origin story. And being a white woman, and that calling for healing through love. And I have no doubt about the calling of healing through love. I really don't want this talk to be all so general, so I'm going to get more specific after this. I don't want that calling of healing through love not to address how many people died in the anti-apartheid struggle and suffered torture and were murdered, and then the ANC coming to power and turning the army on striking miners, that is the calling, because structural change without love doesn't change relationships, doesn't manifest the cultural change and the relational change of respect and caring. And so they, for me, they have to go together. They can't be separate. It isn't just phrases on a cushion. It's about wherever we feel that trigger inside of us, that's the place of revolutionary work. You know, whether it's hearing Trevor Noah talk about the police, so I have to write him a letter, or you know, what can I say, just builders where I was meditating, going way up past 7 p.m. with drills and chainsaws, and like wherever it is I'm triggered, doing that work of healing that place inside of myself so I can address what isn't in balance in the world with respect and love. And that's what the practice of loving kindness is. So, so then, I mean, I could say what the Buddha says about it, but I'm not going to. I'll just read this one story and then I'll go to some of the specific practices for it. For many years belonged to an organization called the Marin Interfaith Task Force, and we would go to Central and South America as groups to be allies. I went to Argentina and Uruguay with a group of people to support them taking generals to court, because some of the people who had been taking generals to court during the junta were being murdered. And so having a whole group of Americans, white Americans, companioning them made it more difficult to murder them. So that work has continued, and so I wanted to. This is what a group that just went to Honduras wrote about. We visited the Guapinol prisoners in central. I'm really messing up the pronunciation. Penal Olanquito in the province of Yoro. They've been in detention for 2 years without trial. 7 of the men came out into a courtyard wearing white t-shirts with 4 in shorts. They were watched over by 2 guards with long guns, while another repeatedly photographed our delegation. Among the Guapinol water defenders are a teacher, an assistant town mayor, members of the community water board, a mechanic, the town barber, and several leaders of the local Catholic parish. The prisoners told us they are doing this because everyone needs water. We are defending all of us, even though we suffer. The rights to all of this is above economic interests. I feel so moved by that expression of love, of caring and of friendship, both for the water, for the land, and for the communities, us included. So then, first of all, then to acknowledge and name the reality that there are many, many times when love and metta or friendliness or caring is very, very far away from us. And so I want to name that also as one of our realities. And for those of us who've experienced trauma, and sometimes extreme trauma, those energies have been a constant companion. And so in talking about metta and our possibility isn't to demonize the places and states that don't have it, but rather to acknowledge that the impact of oppression and patriarchy and racism and homophobia, ableism and classism, and how they have lived in our families and schools and communities and been passed on to us, means that we also get to acknowledge the reality of this woundedness. And for me, it's so important to say this, that my own hatred and my own anger, whether that hatred and anger was turned against myself in shame or blame or towards others, is never deserving of more shame and blame and judgment, but is the consequence of what has been experienced, and is a defense that has been available to us because it's part of the culture and we've taken that in and we have the capacity for it. So that all the times that I've hated, it has been out of a great will to survive. And when I hate, I understand why the hatred is coming up. I can say the difference between the hatred I have now and the hatred that I used to have is that I thought in my youth hatred was the path. And I thought anger was the path. And I thought giving it up meant that I was endangering my survival. And I think it takes some great insight, at least it did for me, to understand that that isn't the path. And it was when I really tried to hurt myself. And in the moment of doing that, I realized I actually didn't want to hurt myself. And out of that turning came something. I didn't know what it was. Didn't know about the Dharma, but I knew I had to find some other way. And that's why, and I know this might be a little more extreme than for some of you, but that's why the Dharma feels such a profound blessing to me, because it gave me a path to heal those energies, and not out of shame and blame, but out of presence and love. And that at the very beginning practice, and some of you have heard this from me, I couldn't love myself, but I loved trees, and I could love trees. And so my first practice of calling in love was not by saying to trees, may you be happy or may you be safe and protected. It was to sing to them. That was my first available practice. And I would walk for hours in the forest singing to trees. And over time that built up so that there was enough space to interject a sentence towards myself. And when I said it, I would feel nauseous. And then I go back to the trees. And over time, the practice of being present and building the strength of presence and of the singing built the capacity a little bit towards that spring. And that was like in the 1980s. So you're hearing the whole trajectory of healing from that place to this place right now. And it rests on, and I didn't get this from my teachers, and I didn't get this from Ruth. For me, it rests on a deep compassion and understanding of why defense is present, or paralysis, or depression, or anger, or hatred, or anxiety, or any of those energies. They totally make sense as defenses. And they are the calling, the invitation for our healing. And so then the practice of finding the gateway, and I think we talked about that a little bit in the question and answer today. What's the gateway? Because in the beginning, I couldn't even sit that much. It was just too hard. I couldn't have the capacity to hold my pain. But I could walk. And so much of my early practice was walking and feeling the movement in my body, and or doing the singing of metta, and not to myself, but to nature. And so this is a support for each of us finding our paths. And then, having said that, at some point the actual sentences of calling forth the love through the intention, and the intention being expressed as phrases, start to actually begin to make sense to me and to resonate. But it took many years. So when I say now, may I be safe and protected, it comes with it the wish, the deep wish in my being for safety and protection. The traditional metta phrase, may I have ease and well-being in my body, heart and mind. Yes, I wish that, but I wasn't able to before. Now I can. All those many, 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 many moments. May I be free. May I be free of all the energies that have taken me away from love, that have seduced me into acting out in ways that are unethical. May I be free. And so finding your gateway, whether that it's singing, whether it's not you in the beginning, or you and other things, using the phrases, if the phrases can be said without feeling nauseous, and not using the phrases as a bargaining tool. Like, I'll say these phrases if you, Arinna, if you feel caring or love. The phrases are me offering it as like a birthday gift. Like, here you are, Arinna, here's a phrase, and I'm not expecting anything in return, because I know each phrase is building my capacity. And that is really important, because if we expect something in return, there isn't the openness for the spaciousness and the love to grow. So saying the phrases. The condition for loving kindness to arise traditionally is that we see the goodness in people and in life. And that in itself is a totally beautiful practice. And it is turning and tuning towards what we appreciate and what we're grateful for. And that's such a traditional spiritual practice. I have found, and I don't know about you, I have found like it is amazingly powerful to begin to take up the practice of appreciation, saying thank you over and over again to everyone and to myself. So, for example, when I am on a rant about Trevor Noah and I remember, oh my God, I'm on a rant, I deeply appreciate. I say to myself, thank you, remembering, I really appreciate you. Like appreciating every time we remember. Or when I forget, why am I in this room? What was it that I wanted to do? And sometimes I that's it. But sometimes it comes back and I'm like, thank you, thank you. And then, of course, for all the other conditions that we can just bow down to, for the food that we eat. And I know some of you have the practice of not eating before you say a blessing, and I join you in that. I don't ever eat 3 meals without saying something in appreciation and thanks. So, and I mean, what we appreciate can be as ordinary and mundane as a good chair in our living rooms. It makes such a difference, doesn't it, to have a decent chair. In this last cabin I practiced, there were no chairs at all. So I really got to appreciate coming home and having my lumpy old armchair by my dining room table. But there's so much to appreciate. And taking that up as a practice, the practice of gratitude, of giving thanks. And then at the end of the day, appreciating what you have called forth in the day that you appreciate. That's my new practice. I don't go to sleep without appreciating at least one thing in the day, or contemplating it, just taking a minute or two every day to appreciate something about the day. And it doesn't have to be personal, it can be the rain. It's that training, seeing the goodness in life, that becomes the grounds for metta. So, you know, there's that book, Radical Acceptance, that was so popular. And I'm like, this is radical appreciation. We get to appreciate everything, and even our history. Then I wanted to talk about, in the practice of metta, the practice of beginning again. I feel so moved, even though it's not personal, that the earth continues to move around the sun and turn on its axis from day into night and night into day. That just feels so amazing to me, that the earth continues to be on its journey, and somehow it touches me as very sacred. The beginning of every day, morning, and the ending of every day, moving into night. And I feel so inspired by that as a practice of beginning again. And I believe, and it feels like it's been such a great support, that there is not a limited number of times when we get to begin again and then suddenly it doesn't count anymore. We get to begin again as many times as we need to. So for however many times I offer love, like last night, and forget it, nothing. And then I'm like, okay, I'll begin again, nothing. Okay, I'll begin again, nothing. And just that action of beginning again without the expectation, the effort of beginning again is actually the path until there's enough energy that I could get out of bed and go and get the drum. So we often think that because we have to begin again, it's a failure, but it isn't a failure. It's just the opposite, that when we fail, we begin again. Or failure isn't the right word. When there's the need, we begin again and we begin again. And that's true of our formal meditation practice as well. Okay, forgot, begin again. Okay, forgot, begin again. That's my practice. My practice is beginning again. Okay, that maybe is enough. So I wanted to read a couple of things. This is what Bishop Tutu said about Nelson Mandela, and I know a little bit personally about how many times Nelson Mandela had to begin again. I know when Nelson Mandela went to jail, he was young, and you could almost say bloodthirsty. He was head of the armed wing of the African National Congress, his party. He spent 27 years in jail, and many would say 27 years, oh, what a waste. And I think people are surprised when I say no, the 27 years were necessary. They were necessary to remove the dross. The suffering in prison helped him to become more magnanimous, willing to listen to the other side, to discover that the people he regarded as his enemy, they too were human beings who had fears and expectations, and they'd been molded by their society. And so without the 27 years, I don't think we would have seen the Nelson Mandela with the compassion, the magnanimity, the capacity to put himself in others' shoes. Just 27 years of beginning again. He writes about that in his autobiography again and again and again, when there clearly wasn't any, like, I'll begin again for this. Like, I'm going to get out, because he didn't know he would get out. I'm just going to begin again and again and again. It's so beautiful. So, so then, talking about the 70s, I don't know if any of you got into Earth, Wind and Fire. The song Shining Star used to be one of my favorites. So this is what Earth, Wind and Fire said in that album. What you see on nights so clear in the sky, so very dear, yes, you are a shining star, no matter who you are, shining bright to see what you could truly be. I love that. And then I'm going to end with a poem by my favorite poet. Whose name I've forgotten. So, but it'll come to me at some point in this retreat. Jai Harjo. Stand tall, no matter your height, how dark your skin, your spirit is all colors within. You are made of the finest woven light, from the iridescent love that formed your mothers, fathers, your grandparents, all the way back on the spiral road. There is no end to this love. It has formed your bodies, feeds your bright spirits, and no matter what happens in these times of breaking, no matter dictators, the heartless and liars, No matter, you are born of those who kept ceremonial embers burning in their hands all through the miles of relentless exile. Those who sang the path through massacre all the way to sunrise. Let's take a moment. Thank you. Thanks for your presence. Thank you for your listening. Thanks for companioning down that path.